everyone, welcome back to another episode of Wheelz Woodworking with myself, Chad Wheelz Palmer. Today we're going to be making this dining room table. It's got a nice rustic patine look to it. I put the breadboard ends on it. I put the beautiful big beefy X legs on the bottom with a nice big center brace. So stay tuned and let's build this one together. So for this project here, I'm going to be using pine. You can buy it at any local box store. You can get it at Lowe's, Rona, any local lumber yard. So I started out here with 2 by 10 by 8 feet long, and I'm currently just breaking it down to the appropriate size. So right here, I'm just figuring out the high spots, the low spots, and you'll see in this one picture what exactly I'm looking for. You'll see that it curves up. So that's the end that I want to be going over to the joiner and going through it that way. So that's exactly what I'm looking for here. So you'll notice as I'm going on my jointer is currently 8 inches wide, and these are 2 by 10s. So you'll see that it's overhanging 2 inches, but you'll see a cool little trick that I picked up by Jay Bates in one of his videos on how to deal with this. So you'll notice here in the picture that I have that extra 2 inches after finishing up on my joiner. So for the planer, what I did was took the stock table that it runs along, and I quickly made a jig that sits in there, and my jig. Then I'm going to flip it over, and we're going to get rid of that additional 2 inches on the other side, and then flatten that out. So right here, I spent time organizing the boards, figuring out what direction I wanted them, and the best boards from the top. And you'll notice I have the grain direction going upwards, then downwards, upwards, then downwards. I rotated them back and forth. This helps over the seasons and the humidity change. So right here, as you can see, I'm just getting ready to do a glue up. I did do this glue up in 3 different sections. As you can see, I already have the 2 together and I let those sit overnight. And now I'm coming in and I'm putting those together. And I'll once again let these guys sit overnight. And you'll notice as I'm putting the clamps on, I'm putting clamps on top, then I'm also putting clamps from underneath. This helps to keep it flat as it's sitting there and the glue's drying. I'm just going to be going over it with my hand plane, just finding the high spots, the low spots, and just touching it up. So right here, I'm just cleaning up the ends. This tabletop is currently 36 inches wide by 66 inches long. So what I'm doing here is I just have my handsaw. I'm just making some brief cuts. And then you're going to notice I'm going to take my chisel and chisel some of it out, router some of it out. And I repeated this 4 times for each side. This gets it all set up for the tongue and groove and my tenon. So I currently just have my marking gauge and I'm just marking. I want to make sure the measurements are correct and the tongue and groove fit properly and the tenon fits properly. So I already have the tongue set up on the main part of the tabletop. Right here now I'm just over at the table saw and I'm just cutting out the groove and this is where it's going to sit in. And once I cut this groove out, then I'm going to be going over to the drill press and drilling out the additional, and that's where the tenons are going to fit in. And you'll see how it all comes together here. I'm currently just at the drill press here and drilling out holes for the dowels, and I'm going to go right through and then take it over, and then I'm taking the board back over to the tabletop and I'm going to fit it in. And you're going to see here I'm just going to give a couple taps, and then I'm going to go ahead and go a little bit forward, about a 16-inch forward. And what this does is when I pound in my dowels, this actually pulls the board into the table, and this will hold it in over time for life and keep it flat and straight. And you'll notice when I'm gluing this together, just before I put in the dowels, I'm only gluing the centerpiece. This allows for wood movement over time. This technique where it pulls the board in with the dowels, it's actually called draw boarding. It's a really neat technique that I currently just learned about. After letting the glue dry, I'm just cleaning it up, taking the additional dowels off, and then I'm going to be cutting the side pieces, the additional off, just to straighten everything up. So after getting the tabletop done, I'm just making two simple L brackets. They're 4 inches by 4 inches, and it's going to screw into the table and then bolt into the X legs, as you're going to see here. So after getting the 4x4 legs squared up and flat and all prepped up, I then this technique that I learned, I took an MDF board and I figured out the height that I needed the legs to be and the length that I needed the legs to be. And so with this template, as I go along, I draw it out on the template, and then I also mark it on to the 4x4. And this is how the half flap, this is how I figure out the angles that I need to cut and also how the half flap's gonna work. So I then just take that off of my template board and almost just pretty much trace on the lines and then figure out exactly where the half flap's gonna come out. And then after that, we're going to go over to the table saw and I'm going to start making the cuts. So a really simple way to figure out what type of cut you need to make on your table saw is what I did was took my angle finder, laid it out on the X legs where I've already traced it out, and then went over to my table saw and lined it up with my miter gauge to figure out what angle I needed it on. And I've already swapped out my regular blade for my dado stack, and then I'm going to go ahead and make the cuts for the half flap joint. So with my dado stack, I cut I'm going to say about 95% of it off. I left about an eighth of an inch that I'm just going to chisel out to get that perfect fit. So right here you'll see I'm just marking it up and I'm just going to be cleaning up each piece with the chisel and just getting that perfect snug fit. So right here, I'm just putting glue on it and getting the X legs together, and then I'm going to be pounding in the dowels, letting them sit, and then cutting off the additional. So I'm currently just marking out the center point on the X legs. Then we're going to move over to the drill press here, and I'm going to be using an inch and a half and just countersinking down about 3/4 of an inch. And then after that, I'm going to be using a 1/2 inch drill bit going all the way through. And this is going to be to attach the X legs over to the tabletop for the bracket that we made. So what I'm doing here is I've got the centerpiece. I did cut that to the appropriate length. And right now I'm just lining it up, making sure it's all square and evened out. Okay, so we totally finished doing a dry fit on this. Everything comes together good. This thing is sturdy. It is strong. Now, the client for this project wanted a bit of a rustic look to it. They wanted it a little, no, I don't want to say beat up, but they wanted to look nice and aged. And I started with 60 grit, went to 80, then to 120. Even 120 might have been a bit smooth for this project, but it's still good. It flattened it out, everything looks good. So what I'm gonna do is just kind of give it an age look. You just kind of take the hammer and just kind of put little dents. You don't want to go all out and start beating it, just little things. Get the chain out. Now this can be a scary part for some people when it comes to the table, but let's have some fun with it. So the client for this project wanted a dark stain, and they went with a dark ebony. And in the beginning, I was a little unsure of this, but as I started to apply it and then wiped it out, it came out beautiful, and I really like how the finished product came out. And once I finished this, I did let it sit for a day, and then I did take it over to the spray booth, and I sprayed it all down and sealed it up. I didn't put that on film because I didn't want to get any of the camera stuff wrecked, and this is what the finished product looks like. I am going to get better pictures once I take it over to the client's house. They're currently away right now, so in the next week or two I'll be updating the video and you'll be seeing a better picture of it. Hey everyone, I hope you guys enjoyed this week's episode of Wheelz Woodworking with myself, Chad Wheelz Palmer. I had fun doing it. I hope you guys had fun watching it. If you guys want to support me and what I do, hit the subscribe button. Hit the like button. It does really mean a lot to me. And yeah, until next week, be safe, build something cool. Thank you.